now. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti. We now are going to bring on Joe Smeltzer, who is our Penn State football beat writer. And when we're talking ranks, even though obviously it's overblown because the portal is included here, Mike, you got to give it up. Between these three schools, Penn State wins in terms of ranks pretty much every year. 14, 15, and 14. So across the board, top 15 ranking for recruiting class for Penn State. You do see a departure in the portal that we mentioned earlier. You do have a season in which you go to the Rose Bowl, but you lose to the two big rivals that you want to beat. So it's kind of polarizing the fan base right now. Joe, how would you say this day went for Penn State? How has their offseason been? How was its recruiting class for Penn State? And I'll also bring up the fact, as we talk with Ethan about Rodney Gallagher, he was flirting with Penn State, admittedly, told Neil Brown this while he was wavering. And it appears that once they didn't fire Brown, he was committed still to the Mountaineers. He never did decommit. You'd have to figure if he ever did decommit or they fired Brown, he would have been at Penn State probably. Him and Franklin have a great relationship. Maybe they're still talking to him for next year. But how did this class shake out? Who maybe should they have got? Who didn't they get? How did it overall go? And did not getting Gallagher because he is a PA kid, literally. Is that a blow at all to Penn State?
Well, first off, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
100%.
That's always in the back of my head. But
no, you're good.
Thanks for having me on. Then I think this recruiting class overall, it was a pretty good one. You mentioned the rankings, Mike, at the top. And I think it really speaks a lot to James Franklin and his staff's abilities that Penn State can get a top 15 class. And I don't want to say anybody's underwhelmed by this class because I don't think that's the case at all. But they're not underwhelmed, but they're not over the moon. And what I mean by that is going back to last season, 2022, Penn State had the number 6 ranked class, and that was thought of at the time, and it's already proven to be, after year one, a game changer. It's like, okay, we've had 2 bad years in a row. We got these guys coming in. This is the class that's going to be the turning point, and so far, it's been a turning point. Penn State isn't in the Rose Bowl without Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, and Abdul Carter. All 3 guys are true freshmen. You asked about players that Penn State could have got. Gallagher would have been nice to have because of his abilities, obviously, and then because Penn State and James Franklin basically admitted this in his post-signing day presser. They don't have a lot of receiver right now. They have had 1 commit, Carmelo Taylor. Haven't gone anybody from the transfer portal yet. Obviously, losing Mitchell Tinsley, who's out of eligibility. Parker Washington going to the NFL. Keandre Lambert-Smith has shown flashes, but he hasn't proven himself enough yet to where Penn State fans can feel comfortable with him being the number 1. And I fully expect that to be addressed in the transfer portal and maybe on late signing day too. Who knows? But overall, you can't really complain too much about what Penn State didn't get. It would have been nice if some guys, Tamarian Parker for 1, Ejani Shaker for 2, Parker a big-time edge rusher, and Shaker a wide receiver. If those guys had stayed committed, they ended up not committing to Penn State and moving elsewhere. But, yeah, overall, it was a very good day for Penn State. Talking about the offseason, it's been quiet so far. As I said, I'm expecting them to add a receiver in the transfer portal. I think they'll add an offensive lineman, maybe a defensive lineman. They'll add some small pieces. I'm not expecting anything crazy to come in the portal because Penn State doesn't really need anything crazy. They had a 10-2 regular season, might go 11-2, and most of the roster that contributed this year is coming back for next year. So nothing really too big to overhaul. But back to the main topic, which is signing day. It was a pretty solid class. I'm not thought of to be a game changer. I don't know if it's going to be as good as the 2023 class, but that's a pretty high bar to set, especially if Drew Aller is even close to the quarterback that people are expecting him to be. So
2022's top 10 ranking last year, right?
Yep. And this was a good class, and Penn State's starting to stack these classes up after a pretty disappointing 2021 class, at least rankings wise. But yeah, overall a good day for Penn State, and things are overall pretty well in Happy Valley right now, I'd say.
They're happy there, yeah.
You know, obviously Penn State cleans up on 4-star recruits. They got 13 4-star recruits out of their 23 overall commitments. Who knows how these guys are going to pan out? But, you know, I think the only, maybe position they didn't really hit, and I don't know that they really need to this year. This coming year will be, I assume that'll be a top priority as far as 2024's quarterback. I think they got Jackson Smolik.
Yep.
They had a decommitment there. If I'm nitpicking, that might be the only position where I don't know that they really address their future quarterback. But as you mentioned, they have their 5-star that's going to play next year, and then obviously that will be a big priority for 24 because who knows how long Drew's going to be there.
Yeah. Was there anybody that James Franklin brought up then that maybe fans aren't looking at right now, because we're talking about so many 4-star kids? It's how you get a top 15 ranking when it's mostly filled with 4-star kids. But was there any diamond in the rough that James Franklin fell in love with that he brought up that said, hey, watch out for this kid. He has these intangibles. He has this, that maybe he didn't get a 4-star. Maybe he's one of the few 3-star kids that we have, but we still really like the kid overall, or even any of the 4-star kids and above that he brought up that he kind of raved about as part of this class?
Yeah, actually, I think the last statement that James Franklin made in his press conference was talking about the guy that nobody is talking about, and those are Franklin's words, is Tyreek Blanding, a 3-star defensive tackle. Actually, he goes by Ty Blanding, apparently, but he's a 3-star defensive tackle, one of the highest rated players in New York. Franklin pointed out that New York isn't a state that really gets looked at too much as far as football talent goes.
Really, no. You don't have a team. It's just Rutgers, and they're historically not been a great program, obviously. Right.
Yeah, but he likes Blanding a lot. Mentioned that Blanding's versatile, can play defensive tackle, can play linebacker well. Doesn't have great size, but that's a guy who Franklin specifically said is undervalued. And you don't know how these guys are going to shake out, but it's always fun to kind of bookmark who coaches say is a sleeper and then look back in a few years and see whether or not they were a sleeper or whether or not people were right in their initial evaluation. So
I'd say the position, Joe, I'm not sure your thoughts on this, but I think a position they did really well in, and it's something that they've done the last couple of years, is a tight end. I think they picked up, I'm not sure if they, or if they're looking ahead to maybe losing guys to the draft early or what, but I think the 3 tight ends that they have, I think they're kind of different, but obviously the big one is Matthias Barnwell, but they picked up 3 really good kids at that position.
Yeah, and Barnwell's a guy, Mike, that people weren't sure where he was going to play coming into the day. He kind of got established as a tight end, at least at the outset today. But James mentioned in his press conference that Barnwell's a guy that could play. I'm trying to think of all the positions he mentioned. Defensive tackle, offensive line, defensive end, and tight end. And maybe I missed one. This is a very versatile guy who could end up a lot of places. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I don't think James Franklin would be surprised if he switched. But the other two guys who Penn State signed, 4-star tight ends, Joey Shelfer from Exeter Township. His brother, Michael Mennett, was a starter on Penn State's line back during the Saquon Barkley era. And then Andrew Rapouillet, a tight end he's from New York, but played high school football at the Milton Academy, which is a boarding school in Massachusetts. Rapouillet in particular, he's gotten comparisons to Pat Freiermuth, which that's a guy, both played high school football in Massachusetts. Both were very good basketball.
It's a high bar.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pressure for a guy to be under. But what I'm interested to see, and I was talking with Milton's head coach back when he committed in April. Andrew was a basketball player, and he couldn't really add the bulk that a tight end, you'd like a tight end to have, because he was running up and down and having to have his cardio in shape for basketball season. He won't have to worry about that at Penn State. So maybe, he bulks up a little bit, becomes even more of a punisher in the blocking aspect of being tight end. And that could just not having to worry about switching your body and habits and workout habits between sports seasons. If you're focused on just one sport, then you can focus on getting in the right body type to be a tight end. But Penn State's tight ends right now are pretty good as it is. You have Brendan Strange. I don't know if he'll be in the NFL next year, but Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren should be back. Khalil Dinkins, the Western PA guy, he was the guy that kind of got lost in the shuffle. He might see an increased role next year. And as could Jerry Cross, a 4-star signee from Milwaukee, who was part of the class of 2022. So that's a very deep position group that Penn State has, and they got a lot of guys there. And it's I don't know if you can say it's a problem yet, but if it becomes a problem with too many bodies, it's definitely a good problem to have. So
talking with Joe Smeltzer here, is he our Penn State football beat writer with Nittany Sports Now, and Penn State is kind of that enigma because it's why it's so polarizing among the fan base. You really could wake up in the morning and probably recruit a top 20 class, even if you don't try. You really put an effort in. You could get a top 10 class like last year, and then you end up with this top 15 class. You're going to always be able to recruit nationally. There's going to be kids that grew up always wanting to go to Penn State that will spurn other places to get to Happy Valley, and regardless of their stars, you're always going to have talent there, and you're in the Rose Bowl. But yet the goal is to be able to dominate the conference, and you're trying to win a national championship and really vie for the national scene. But you're also dealing with Ohio State and now Michigan, who can do the same thing in terms of recruiting the country and easily do well recruiting. So it's hard to sell, hey, top 15 recruiting class, we're going to keep on building this, because you're going to have naysayers say, well, yeah, it'll be another 2-loss season and you'll be in the Rose Bowl. But at the end of the day, 10-2 or 11-2 and in the Rose Bowl is nothing to sneeze at, because the two teams that Penn State lost to are both in the college football playoff. So it was a solid year for Penn State. Yeah, some fans want better, and you were recruiting nationally, so maybe expectations are there. But another solid recruiting class. You cannot be mad at top 15, even though maybe there's not that major star that jumps out nationally. Joe, we appreciate the time, all your work over there at Nittany Sports Now. So head over there and find more of the reaction from Joe Smeltzer and the gang. And also,
safe trip out to Pasadena, Joe.
I was going to say, I'm very jealous, actually. You're going to be covering the Rose Bowl on location in Pasadena, though. So have fun as well as do the work for us over there. All right, Joe Smeltzer with Nittany Sports Now. So that means we are going to close up shop with our cleanup hitter to hit a home run or two for us. Mike Vukovcan and Mike Asti will now bring in, and this is Mike, and Mike. We will now bring in the third Mike of the trio here, Mike Farrell, our national college football analyst and writer within the Sports Now family of networks. So, Mike, thanks for joining us. I know you're obviously a very, very busy man on this day. That's kind of like Christmas, but maybe I saw your gift to what I asked for, maybe not as much as it was in recent years because of the portal. Any surprises for you on this day? How do you think these teams did? I know you're listening to a lot of this show. Do you disagree, agree with anything that's been said so far in terms of Pitt, West Virginia, and Penn State, but even nationally?
I missed the Pitt part, the West Virginia part when you talk about the locals. As was mentioned, I don't know who said it, but it's right. I mean, you really don't know anything.
Right.
If this is a political state, if this was a Florida or Texas or California or Ohio or a state that produces a ton of talent, you're kind of beholden to at least give those kids an extra look and not take a kid from Florida over a local Ohio kid. It could come bite you in the butt, if you do that, but not West Virginia. I mean, these kids, they all, are trying to get attention. They're all trying to go beyond Group of Five or FCS. But you take the ones you feel will fit. There's no political requirement here. It doesn't matter if you can not get back into that school because there isn't a big power school there. So Neil Brown and his staff, they have to recruit. I've always said this about West Virginia. There is no home recruiting territory for them. They have to hit Western PA. They have to hit Maryland, the DMV area, and they have to spot recruit down southeast, but also hit Texas, hit California, hit Ohio, which they got away from for a few years, which was puzzling to me, and they're back recruiting there again. And just hope to put together a class of 25 kids or so, where you could be pulling, kids from 15 states. And that's really a disadvantage. And it's why West Virginia is never in the top 25. And you can't be with the disadvantages they have. So anything between 25 and 30 is great. Anything between 25 and 35 is excellent and really the goal, I think, for West Virginia. Penn State, we talked about top 10. That would be great. It's not an effort thing. So Florida was an interesting discussion before because, people think it's easy to recruit Florida because there's so many kids there. And we talk about the big three, Miami, Florida State, and Florida, but there's UCF now. They're a Power 5 program. Everybody goes into Florida. Everybody. Every team in the SEC and the ACC, every team in the Big Ten. So for James Franklin, Daniel Harris was lost today. That's a tough loss because you put so much effort in, and at the last second, you can snap your fingers and just lose somebody to a home state program that comes in the last second and makes him a priority, or a program like UGA when he was kind of maybe 5th or 6th on their list. So there's really a balance there, but you have to stay in there. I know schools, West Virginia being one of them, that kind of started to shy away from Florida for a little while because they lost so many down the stretch. You have to put in the work and just hope for the best. And I think that's what all three of these, Pitt is doing it as well. But there's a lot of heartbreak, and fans don't understand that you're going to lose more than you get.
Yeah, that's why Pitt, Charlie Partridge is such a valuable guy on the Pitt staff. As you mentioned, every school, it's not something unique to go try to recruit Florida, but you have to have the right guys with the right reputation and the right contacts to recruit that state. Mike, Pitt, the Pitt fans, when they won the ACC championship last season, instantly fans think that that's going to result in a huge spike in recruiting rankings. What's your take on what Pat Narduzzi did this year? And is that fair to think that there should have been an instant spike, or is that a gradual thing and time in as far as being able to win, and then you'll start seeing the benefits of that?
You should see a spike the next year. So if you win, in the 2021 season, you should see, a spike the next recruiting year, 2022, and so on and so on. So that's disappointing from that perspective. You don't want to have right now, I think they're in the 45 to 50 range nationally on most of the sites. And, that's not great. You don't want that. Should it be an area of concern? Yeah. But will it be made up in the portal? That's the big question that we never had before. If you have a clunker of a recruiting class, and I'm not disparaging this class at all, but if I'm a Pitt fan, and I've always been honest with everybody about everything. Aaron Donald has a 3-star kid back in the day, and I had to tell everybody why, and I was wrong, and I'm dumb. I'll always just tell you the truth. Doesn't matter. I don't think I'm right all the time.
Opinions can change. No one's going to bat 1,000. We get it.
So here's the thing. I'm not here to tell Pitt fans, this is great. It's not, but you can make up for it in the portal now, and you couldn't do that years ago. And I think that plays to the strategy as well. So we talk about staying in there for certain kids and having certain kids make demands. And Kenny Minchie is a good example of this, and not a demanding kid, not a kid that I want to make millions, but a Notre Dame rolls in, knocks on the door, comes in with a nice NIL package for him. It's a bigger program. You're going to fight, but you can also say, this one we're not going to win. Let's focus on the portal and see what we can get there. Now, you'd want a 4-star developmental quarterback. Some have him as a 3. I think he's right on that border. I'm not as high on him as some other people are nationally. But then you can adjust. You can get your portal quarterbacks, and then the next year to try to get that developmental kid that maybe is a 4-star. So my point here is Pitt's class is disappointing. There's no doubt in my mind. All right, I'm not going to lie to you and sell you. But the portal can make up for it. And I think that's where you have to focus.
And that's where Pitt has focused, because out of these 3 schools, could certainly say that Pitt's had the most success this offseason in terms of adding from the portal. So that is kind of the plan, that they're trying to continue the beat to go on and do it from the portal. But of course, you do need to also look to recruiting, and top 50, when even another school like, say, West Virginia is in the top 40, and they're also near you an hour away, and they've been worse the last 3 or 4 years, that maybe doesn't make Pitt fans too excited. But as you mentioned, the portal is an entire different a ball of wax to this. So, Mike, I do want to kind of ask you, in terms of either, any of these 3 schools, Justin Benton flips from West Virginia to Houston. Dana Holgerson, the former Mountaineer coach, grabs him. They had a visit 2 days ago. Prior to that, he was always committed to West Virginia. That was kind of a surprise for the Mountaineer staff. They kind of admitted. So, but is it that one? Is there anything else? Pitt, Penn State, maybe even outside that was a surprise for you? A lot of this were Pitt went 19 for 19. West Virginia lost Benton, but otherwise got most of their guys they reasonably thought they were going to get. They were in top 5 for Snowden, but they probably were never really going to get him. And then Penn State top 15 class again, and they're in the Rose Bowl. Any surprises though that happened, or is it Benton?
No, I mean Snowden we all knew was going to be Wisconsin.
Right. He went with Fickle, right?
Yeah, and it was. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't want to. You want to be positive about it and confident about it. You don't want to ruin the moment for the kid. But that was one the staff knew that he was gone as well. So you don't want surprises, honestly. You really don't.
No.
So I think it's good that there aren't a lot of surprises. I mean, you want positive surprises. You'd love to be Oregon today, where you're stealing kids this and that.
Sure,
but you also don't want to be. Also don't want to be Oregon right now because they stole Peyton Bennett. Peyton Bowen from Notre Dame, and he hasn't sent his letter in. And now they're scrambling, and now he's talking to Notre Dame again, and this could drag out. And it's just, there comes a point.
There have been kids that announced they aren't going to sign today now that some teams thought they locked in. Right.
Which, impacts Penn State for sure. But that's good news, because obviously that could have gone a different way. But yeah, there's a lot of kids that are sort of like hemming and hawing. And honestly, in my experience with these kids is, the dramatic kids, the ones you fight for the most, are the ones that don't pan out or transfer or aren't great for the locker room. So boring. I mean, listen, there's no way. Penn State's class, I think, is very good, and I've written about how good it is. Did they miss at quarterback? Yeah, they did. They'll make up for that, though. They're an attractive enough program where they'll get somebody in the portal and they'll revamp next year. Now, James Franklin has had sort of a history of kind of whiffing on quarterbacks, so that's a concern. But he also took Trace McSorley, who I had as a defensive back, who I didn't think could ever play quarterback, and he turned out to be, pretty good. And then, Will Levis transferring. Oh my God, Sean Clifford sucks. Will Levis, you just never know. Will Levis was horrible this year. Sean Clifford was very serviceable. You don't know. Star rankings and quarterbacks. Sometimes it's easy, like Trevor Lawrence, and sometimes you're just going to whiff. And it's all about developmental. So I'm not worried about that in that class. Penn State's class, I think, is very good. Top 15 class is what you want every year. You're not going to beat Ohio State, but if you could be there with Michigan and be that second or third team in the Big Ten every year, great, perfect. West Virginia's class, a big surprise to me. Neil Brown on the hottest of hot seats all year long, gets another year. But kind of honestly, a dead man walking as a coach because he's got to do it this year. This isn't it. There's not going to be another year.
That's hard to sell in the living room. That I don't know if
hard.
I'm going to be here for. The athletic director is saying, I don't know if you're going to be there for a year. You're trying to sell these kids. And as you know, a lot of these kids flat out said the reason why Gallagher went to Penn State and visited, or the reason why they were waffling, is because they wanted Brown to stay. They were not going to probably commit if Brown was fired. So these kids in this solid recruiting class, they're all in with Brown, but he can't guarantee that he'll be there in a year, even if they're still there.
No, he can't. And it's really hard to recruit that way, which is why I think it's such a great job that's been done by the staff, because, you didn't have a good year. The guy was, fired 1 week, given another chance the next week, and on and on. And that's really hard to sell in living rooms. It's really hard to really put together a recruiting class, and so I look at it compared to Pitt, because you should always compare West Virginia to Pitt geographically. They're located near there, and that's kind of the bar. Narduzzi, there is no question whether he was going to be the coach. It was a disappointing year for sure, but for West Virginia to have a better and higher ranked recruiting class than Pitt, that's impressive. West Virginia did a very good job this year. Is he the guy? I don't know. We're going to find out, but you could easily have, one of those 50 to 60 ranked recruiting classes with the guy on the hot seat here. So if I'm a West Virginia fan, I'm happy with what I see recruiting wise. If I'm a Pitt fan, I'm disappointed. And if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm never satisfied, because Penn State fans are never satisfied.
They're not, no.
But I understand, this is a good class. This is a class that, we can actually compete in the Big Ten when they get rid of divisions. That will certainly help. So I'd be probably content if I'm a Penn State fan.
Hey, Mike, it's never too early to look ahead a little bit. I've already gotten questions about this, and I don't. I have a guess, but I have no idea. But really, the three big prospects in Western Pennsylvania this year or next year, class of 2024: Quentin Martin, Cam Lindsay, and Anthony Specca. Pitt have any chance at any of those three? If so, which player do they have the most realistic chance at possibly trying to get?
So this was another thing I was going to talk about a little bit is, and obviously you got Western PA, you've got Eastern PA, you got a mix of what's going on there. The WPIAL is way down, and it's been down for years. I think the last time the WPIAL was really, really elite and good was when Dave Wannstedt was recruiting at Pitt, which is a very, very long time ago. And that's hurt Pitt a lot. It used to be let's fend off Notre Dame and Ohio State and Michigan for our WPIAL kids, or maybe some Southeast teams who come up and try to steal kids. That's our battle, but we've got a home field advantage. Now they're recruiting on the road a lot more. Pitt, for these kids, Quentin Martin, first of all, is going to be a guy that everybody in the world comes after. Now, is it attractive to play at Pitt? Yeah. He's a running back. And the way their offense is structured, you're going to get a ton of carries, and you're going to be the guy. That being said, if the Georgias and Alabamas of the world are coming in, the Ohio States of the world are coming in, you're probably not going to win that battle. So I don't want to sell false hope. Penn State already has Cooper Cousins, and that's a good start. Agard, a Philly kid, got a ton of interest. Becca has a ton of interest. If I had to pick one that I think they would have the best shot at, it would be Martin, because he is a local kid. He's very proud of his, home state. He's a kid who seems to be down to earth. He's not an NIL seeker, and he likes that staff and he likes that offense because it's perfect for him. But everything could change between now and the time 2024 comes around, because the offense could change. The offenses other teams could change. Narduzzi could take another job. You have no idea what's going to happen. So right now I'd say that's the guy that they're focusing on and they have the best shot at. But even if he commits tomorrow to someplace else, it's never over.
Yeah, right. You got a whole year ahead. Sure.
And so that's why it's way, way too early to even consider that. Like, Cooper Cousins from McDowell is committed to Penn State. Whoop-de-doo. It means nothing.
It's almost probably smart for kids not to get near committing this early, a year in advance. Like, let it play out a little bit. Let them court you.
They have nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing. I'll commit to Penn State, whatever. And I'm not saying Cousins is this type of guy. Nothing to lose. Other teams are going to come in and try to. So it's really the coaches that have no kind of say in this.
And what will exist for the entirety of the year for the 2024 class that just started existing for PA kids that Rodney Gallagher already jumped on because he has an NIL deal while he's still in high school, is they'll be able to do that all year long. Like they'll be able to get out in front of that now and be able to go behind the Gallagher path there in PA. So that's a big deal. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti, Mike Farrell here talking on our Sports Now Network National Signing Day show. Mike, before we let you go, I do kind of want to bring up what Mike V and I talked about at the top of the show before we brought the guests on in terms of evaluating recruiting classes in this new era. We're in a transfer portal era. Pitt, top 50 class, but they're looking a lot to the portal to try to win now. West Virginia did that for years, but now they're admittedly trying to develop. Will that be a good or bad thing? It's kind of risky when you're on the hot seat. Penn State, you're winning 10 games in the Rose Bowl. You don't have to worry about the portal as much, but they certainly could get kids interested in that program and have dealt with transfers before. And you can quickly fix something in the portal as well as also see a mass exodus, which these programs have all endured. Jordan Addison leaving Pitt despite an ACC title. That clearly was a money grab. West Virginia losing a lot of kids to the portal, etc. So for you, is there any thinking for you in terms of giving these ranks, in terms of giving letter grades, and when you evaluate and when you write articles for us on, I got to do something new and change something because just doing it the simple grade off of a recruiting class isn't really fair. Is there any way you're going to be able to include a transfer situation when you're grading an off season overall, or are recruiting grades and evaluation rankings maybe overrated now because of the portal?
Well, the high school grades and rankings are overrated because of the portal. I mean, there's so many kids that in this class that we're talking about and losing sleep over and all that are going to be in the portal after spring or after their freshman season. So that's overrated. The calendar itself isn't conducive a lot to ranking a combination class. It's more so now because they do have this stupid window. I hate the window, the 45-day window, but at least it lumps everything together. You've got your early signing class ranking for high school. Then you've got your February signing day, and you've got most of the portal done. And then you get the 15 days after the spring. So the way I think it should be done, and I haven't figured out if I'm going to do this or not yet, I'm still doing team rankings for high school and team rankings for the portal. And I don't have a mathematical system. I'm all subjective now. I hated the mathematical system. It was something that was thrown upon us because we didn't want any bias. But people still think we're biased. I mean, what's the point of having a mathematical system if you're just going to be accused of bias anyways? And the mathematical system says, well, it's the math that did it, not me. Yeah, but you rank the individual players, and those formulas go into the overall team formula. So if you're biased towards a team, you're going to rank those kids higher. It's just subjective is the way to go. I think more of an emphasis should be put on your portal ranking than on your high school ranking, because those kids are less likely to double portal. Of course, JT Daniels is on his 15th school, but that's rare.
He's the Van Wilder of college football.
It's very rare. Yeah. So, and we see USC didn't have a great recruiting class last year as far as nationally. Lincoln Riley's first year kind of held back a lot of scholarships. I don't even know where they finished, but it wasn't like, it was solid, but it wasn't top 5, top 10 or whatever. Right. But their portal, they brought in 28 kids. Yeah. And the portal is all that mattered because Caleb Williams was in the portal. Jordan Addison was in the portal. Mario Williams was in the portal. Everybody who played and made a big part of that roster was in the portal. So for me, if you're a fan, I think what you should do is focus on the high school rankings, focus on the portal rankings. But if they were combined, if somebody does combine them, mathematical or not, I think it should be more of a 65-35 split with an emphasis on the portal rankings, which is great news for Pitt. Because like I said, if you have a dud of a class, you can make up for it in the portal. It's not so great news for West Virginia because they kind of struggle in the portal a little bit. But a lot of that, I think, is Neil Brown not being, he's been on the hot seat for a couple of years now. And for Penn State, I think it's really good for them because they do a good job and a solid job in the portal. So that's how I would do it. 65-35 portal now. And I think that's going to get bigger percentage for the portal as we move on because high school recruiting it's not fading away, but it's becoming less important.
All right, last question, Mike. You're the godfather. I've respected you for years. That's why I got into this business, is because of reading your stuff over the years. So you have a feel for what's going to happen. Deion Sanders is the talk of college. We're just going to switch here,
to say the least.
The talk of college football. He's making a lot of headlines. Is this a long-term thing, or do you see this flaming out as far as him having the passion to do this for a long time, or was this just a 3, 4, 5 year thing and then he's done?
Well, he'll coach. I think he has a passion for coaching. Now, again, Deion's very hard to predict, but he's always been into coaching. Back when he cropped up those high school teams that failed, and he was always a guy who was around the Under Armour game and has a passion for coaching and teaching kids. So for him to get into coaching is not a big surprise to me. Colorado's a surprise. He'll be there for 2 years, and that's the shelf life of his son at quarterback there.
Right.
And then he's gone. But he'll go to a bigger program. I mean, Florida State may welcome him back if Norvell sort of, recedes a little bit, or some other.
They weren't
program
interested in him last year. That was kind of.
Well, they will be, because what they're going to see here.
His value is higher, I guess, now as a coach.
Well, and we're also going to see more celebrity type head football coaches because
Sure.
of Deion Sanders
On the higher level, not just HBCUs, because we've seen those with former players at the HBCU level.
Yeah.
But now he's going to pave the way for Power 5.
Oh, and I'm
Right.
trying to think of the next guy who it could be. You know, I don't really know. You know, it could be. You know,
Well, Eddie
we
George is currently coaching in the HBCU, not having the
Yeah.
success of Deion. People thought Ryan Leaf would go into coaching. He's more into media now.
Trent Dilfer's in coaching now. He's in Group of 5. They're not Deion though. I'm trying to think of, like, you know,
Deion's
Peyton-
pizzazz, like that
would a Peyton
swagger's a little
Manning,
different.
You know, would a Peyton Manning ever be interested in being
Okay.
a head football coach at a college level? Those type of guys would really move the needle.
I'll ask this because I know West
Go
Virginia
ahead.
fans ask this literally, actually, and I'll let you go on then. Pat White has had a career of coaching. He's currently an assistant with the Chargers. He's been at programs, USF
Mhm.
and even lower. There are some that actually want him on the staff or would want him hired if Brown is fired. Is that insanity, or is there now more of a chance of those things because of Deion?
There's a chance. Pat White is one of the best college football players you're ever going to see, ever. And still, the general fan base doesn't know who he is, nor do the recruits. Deion is like that guy.
Sure, that's fair.
I think Pat White would be a great addition to the West Virginia staff, just like Denard Robinson at Michigan and things like that. Bring back former
Drew
players.
Brees.
One of Cadillac Williams at Auburn. You know, those guys are going to be successful in that area because they're well known. You know, Deion's going to go. Well, this is a 1-11 football team. He's going to go 5-7 next season, maybe 6-6 the following season. Leave for a bigger job, but leave Colorado in such a better place with NIL. They've reduced their academic restrictions now. He's going to leave that roster in a much better place. That's kind of what you're going to see. You're going to see the smaller schools or the middling schools that are struggling hire big name guys that will come in for a couple of years, stepping stone it, and change their entire infrastructure because NIL is so important. The biggest thing Deion's going to do for Colorado is change that NIL collective. That's it. And that's the most important thing that he could possibly do. And Colorado's going to be in great shape because of that. So, yeah, it's a trend.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't think he's a good coach. No offense to him. I don't think he's a good coach. He had the best roster. Not even close. The best roster. So prove to me that I'm trying to think of an example of a team that was so exponentially better. Even Alabama during the dynasty wasn't exponentially better than the runner-up team. Prove to me you can do it at the college level when you're not the best roster, then I'll believe in you. But right now I don't. So
as you mentioned, though, if he gets 6
higher.
wins in a bowl game in Colorado after what they've endured for 20 years, he'll be thought of as Vince Lombardi nationally. Like, he'll get talked about very positively off of just a bowl appearance.
Wow, listen, people are already talking about Colorado's the new Alabama, so there's a lot of idiots out there.
No, I hear you.
I mean, I've heard everything about everything.
But the bar's not that high that he has to do, though. He doesn't have to do that much. 5-7, that'll be a positive turnaround from one win.
It's a smart move in a way because you can't get worse than 1-11.
The bar is low. Yeah.
Right. You know, so listen, all power to him. I don't dislike the guy. I mean, it's very flattering. He follows me on Twitter. I DM with him every once in a while. Well, listen, I'm a huge Deion fan. I'm a Cowboy fan. But I grew up following Florida State and
it's intriguing if nothing else.
Atlanta and San Francisco and Dallas. It's great. I love him.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know if he can coach. But for Colorado, 1-11. This is the move you make. West Virginia, if they were 1-11 and they wanted to target Deion and he was interested, they should hire him in a second because it's going to change everything about your program.
Yeah.
And that's what's necessary. That's why more celebrity hires are going to be. Pat White, love you. You're not a celebrity hire.
No, I just brought him up because he's
Local.
the one in coaching. They do obviously have bigger name celebrities that are involved, but
Randy
that's even
Moss.
why.
How about Randy Moss? There's a coach that he can't coach a lick. But you bring him to West Virginia.
Pac-Man Jones.
Well, I mean, Randy Moss. That is the biggest name in wide receiver history other than Jerry Rice. He comes to West Virginia. 2 years, West Virginia is a completely different program because of him, and he may not be able to coach a lick.
I don't know if he'd want to, though, because he has a personal problem against WVU that goes way back to high school days, and then he ended up at Marshall, as we know.
He wouldn't, but he's the West Virginia version of Deion Sanders.
No, 100%. No, I get what you're saying, and that's why it was a fantastic hire for Colorado for sure, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure others will jump aboard. The bar is very, very low. They're very, very intriguing, to say the very, very least, and Deion is kind of one of those guys that if he's with you, you love him. If he's not with you, you're kind of annoyed by him. Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe he's at Florida State in the future. Maybe we'll see if he locks in there or if he keeps on jumping. If he ever gets to FSU, does he stay there for a period of time? Since it does seem like he does actually like coaching, but he's also likes the money, as Primetime has told you for 35 plus years.
More than the money, he likes the attention.
He likes the attention, 100%. Yeah,
the attention. So he'll jump around a lot.
He's an egomaniac for sure, which has been a positive for him in his career. Mike, we definitely appreciate the time for sure. You're definitely the godfather, to say the least. Obviously, we appreciate all your work with us throughout the Sports Now family of networks. All that will keep on coming at Pittsburgh Sports Now, WVSN, and Nittany Sports Now. Mike V, anything else for?
No, it's on to 2024. We get off this call here.
How about you a little plug for the Portal Report too? Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Absolutely, yeah, the Portal Report, absolutely.
Guys, you know,
yeah.
Absolutely.
My whole thing is, now that I'm independent, I want to move the needle for people, but I also focus on my own site too. So it's a tough balance. Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State's easy for me because my site doesn't focus on that much. The Portal, man, I'm telling you, it's a gold mine, and eventually we'll have to talk about merging, because I think if we merge, we would be unstoppable when it comes to the Portal.
Well, taking over the world is always something that'll
if that's the case, Mike, I'm going to be booking a flight, and we're going to meet face to face, and we'll.
Well, I also think you guys can build out your network too. Yeah. I really do believe you can move into different states. I think it's a great 3-site network.
Yeah.
We got a chance to.
Oh yeah,
even higher.
Oh, it's in our brain as well. That's not the first time that's been thought about. Absolutely, there's things on the feelers, but yeah, absolutely, taking over the world is something that we also will enjoy as well. But nonetheless, here we are, and National Signing Day now is over. It is a portal world, but the college kids and the high school kids and the National Signing Day is still kind of trying to all live in it and marry all of it together. So Mike Farrell, MikeFarrellSports.com, by the way, is his site that he also contributes to, of course, and runs, and then the Portal Report, in addition to WVSN, PSN, and Nittany Sports Now. So, Mike, we definitely appreciate the time. That was Mike Farrell. Again, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti. So, Mike, National Sign Day now is behind us. We can maybe, grab a cold one.
It's almost behind us. There's still
it's never over officially, but true. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be another day in first Wednesday in first.
Right. This is the early period.
February.
Yeah.
But that'll be probably a lot more about transfers and stuff. But there are some guys who chose not to sign, and will sign at the All-American game and some other things. But 80-90% of the recruiting for this year is done, and coaches are looking at the 2024 roster or their roster next year, and we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's multiple ways to skin a cat here in terms of portal, no portal, recruiting, develop, whatever you want to do. We'll see who's right and who's wrong. And definitely seems like a portal world that we're all living in nonetheless. So that seems to be the way to go. But if you can't have success there, then maybe you have to go another route. And maybe we will see more former players of the Deion Sanders route to come in. Honestly, the one example, and he's not going to coach for a very, very long time, Drew Brees. Purdue brings in Drew Brees to be on the staff for a bowl game, maybe a little bit after, and all of a sudden they're stealing an offensive coordinator. They were just in the Big Ten title game, but only because of the division format. They weren't really that great, but those type of big names maybe could bring a pizzazz to the program and help them recruiting-wise. We'll see if that worked for them or not. But again, Pittsburgh Sports Now, WV Sports Now, Nittany Sports Now, and of course the Portal Report for all of our coverage of the portal and recruiting. And then of course, MikeFarrellSports.com for Mike's individual site as our takeover of the world of college athletics, as well as the high school game. And of course, recruiting and the portal continues on.